is a part of the Jeremy Lin story that wasn't exactly feel good. ESPN became part of the story over the weekend when a headline writer was fired for using the phrase chink in the armor to describe the Knicks' first loss in the Jeremy Lin era. An ESPN anchor was suspended 30 days for using the same phrase. 2 points of clarification here. The writer claims that it was an honest mistake, and the anchor says that, insists, in fact, that the offending word was unintentional. He has apologized. Stephen A., you believe there is a bigger issue at play here. What's the point you want to make?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to comment about, what our employers decide to do. We work for them. It's not our place to do that. I mean, when they let me go, when they didn't renew my contract a few years ago, I didn't comment about me. So I'm certainly not going to comment about anybody else. Let me say this, though. At some point in time, the black community has to recognize that we share a level of culpability in any kind of incident like that transpires. Because the heightened sensitivity that exists in our society today, we are in large part, we have a lot to do with that. As my man Skip Bayless and I have talked about over the years, there's never an excuse for somebody in a very derogatory fashion, especially, to use the N-word. There's just no excuse for it.
No excuse.
We understand what it means. We understand the historical perspective of that.
Right.
But there are a multitude of other things that we have classified as racially insensitive. Some of the leaders in the black community have done so, and I'm not sitting there and calling them out as if they were wrong. I understand whether you're a Reverend Al Sharpton or Reverend Jesse Jackson. I was just with Maxine Waters, representative out of California years ago, who I love dearly. The issues that they fought, they grew up in a different time. They lived in a different time, and there's a level of sensitivity that they harbor because they know what it means, and they've experienced some of the things people of my generation have not.
Right.
However, that heightened level of sensitivity has had a contagious effect on other communities. So suddenly everybody is sensitive about a lot of different things because they're saying, well, if the black community gets to be ultra sensitive about anything that could be perceived as race, we may not even be sure. We might think it. And because of that, it becomes something that generates a shrapnel of criticism and controversy, and ultimately we're touching on it in such a fashion. Then you have people from the white community speaking up and saying, wait a minute, what about what we find offensive? All right, you have people from the Hispanic community. What about what we find offensive? Now you've got folks from the Asian community. What about what we find offensive? And the list goes on. And here's what has happened. We're in an unforgiving society now. Regardless of what you want to sit there and say, we don't have to talk about this incident or whatever, there are other instances in our lifetime in America where people have lost their jobs. They've lost their livelihoods. I'm on the record. I don't believe Jimmy the Greek should have been fired years ago. I've always said that. Yeah. He was off the air. He was in a bar. He was inebriated, and somebody stuck a camera in front of his face. And because of that, 30-plus years of a career down the drain. We're unforgiving. And I'm looking at a black community, and I'm saying, we make up approximately 13 to 14% of the American population, okay? You look at the Census Bureau reports, it says that by the year 2039, the black population will increase by 1%. The Hispanic population in this country will double. Wow. When you look at it from that standpoint, we're in danger of becoming an endangered species, okay? So when you look at it from that perspective, you have to get to a point where you don't erase what you're sensitive to. Okay? But you have to be forgiving from the standpoint of if somebody apologizes genuinely, let's try to be a bit more forgiving, because if we're not, then other people are not going to be so forgiving when something goes down with them, whether it's the ethnic groups or whether it's the homosexual community and what they perceive as offensive. And suddenly people are losing their jobs, they're losing their careers, they're losing their ability to provide for their families and all of this stuff. And why? Because somebody made a mistake. We got to be careful about having an absence of compassion. You can say what you want about me. I sit on these airwaves across from my man here, and we call it like we see it. But it is rare in the day when somebody can look in my face and tell me there's an absence of compassion, that I want somebody's career to be over, that I want somebody to lose their job or their ability to provide for their family because of a mistake. And it emanates from a level of sensitivity that we harbor that, dare I say, sometimes is just not justified. The N-word, that's flagrant. We know what that is, particularly when it's white on black because of historical context. You know not to do that. But there are some other instances, white community and other communities, where black folks classify something as a racial issue that I quite honestly don't find justified. And that's got to change. That's what I wanted to say.
Strong?
It is strong. That is big and insightful of you to acknowledge. And I appreciate that enlightenment, because I hadn't thought of it quite that way. Though I must point out, Saturday Night Live opened its show the other night with a scathingly satirical skit based just on what you said, in which the black commentators were making Asian jokes, but then when the white guy on the end made some jokes about the black guys, they were like, what's that about?
Right. It's not fair. It's out of bounds.
Okay. And it really put that, what you just said, in a humorous perspective. But speaking of humor, can sensitivity sometimes become oversensitivity? Maybe. But I will take oversensitivity compared to undersensitivity any day of the week, because I think it's a painful but necessary process we all have to go through. I know in my younger days as a columnist, I wasn't sensitive to some factions, what they found offensive. And I was shocked, like, really, that's offensive?
Right.
But if any group perceives your humor, my humor, as offensive, then we should just stop it. We should eradicate it. Because even if we're saying we speak fondly, we're kidding because we love, doesn't work. If you're offended by it in your group, in my group, where I'm from, the state of Oklahoma, some people get offended by being called Okies. I do. I take that very offensively because of the Steinbeck Grapes of Wrath. Okay, you probably have no feel for that whatsoever, but I take it deeply. I'm really deeply
So you're saying we
stung by
need to
it.
be oversensitive just so we recognize everybody's sensitivity.
May I interject with this, though? I don't disagree with a single word that you just said, but there's a bigger problem. And the bigger problem is that, Skip, sometimes, and this is what bothers me, and that's why I felt the need to say what I just said, there are some things that people don't know is offensive. I mean, I don't know the list of things that are offensive to the homosexual community, to the black community, obviously the black community, to the white community, to the Hispanic community, to the Asian American community. I don't know.
Right.
Now, if you tell me that it's offensive and I ignore you and do it anyway, all bets are off. But if I didn't know, I didn't know. I remember when the whole Rush Limbaugh controversy came out years ago with what he said about Donovan McNabb. My issue with him wasn't what he said. It was once he was told why it was offensive, his unwillingness to initially apologize.
Right.
Don Imus, same thing. Look, man, it was a joke. I understand that, but do you understand how that resonates? Once you're told, okay, then you should be given that initial opportunity to apologize. And if you do, and you're sincere, let's move forward, because the bigger issue is this. Black folks don't make mistakes. We make mistakes all the time. So what happens if you don't if there's an absence of sensitivity and there's an absence of compassion, then obviously people are going to switch it to us. I got white folks out here calling me a racist because they don't like what I said about a particular player or something like that. But I ignore it because I know they're false. But why do I ignore it? Jay, I'll come up to you. Skip, I'll come up to you. I'll come up to numerous white folks that I know that are my friends, and I'll be like, excuse me, how did this sound? Did this come across that way? So what I'm trying to say is that, again, but that's after I came up to y'all. I don't just assume that I'm right.
No,
and I'm going to dismiss
that's the best
somebody.
thing you can do is actually go to someone of that set and ask them, is this offensive?
But we're living in a society where people are not getting an opportunity to do that before losing their jobs.
Let me give you an opportunity here, Stephen A.
That's tough.
I'll give you an opportunity because I envision that there will be many from your community. There will be blacks that heard your message and won't be happy with it.
Right.
You're probably going to hear from many of them on Twitter.
So
just go ahead and address all of your critics now because you know they're going to be out there.
Let me say this to Black America. I didn't say y'all. I said us. I'm a proud black man. I love my people. And they can sit there and say whatever they want, but you guys know, and people who worked with me here, Fox, CNN, anywhere else knows that I come to the defense of my community on many, many occasions in those newsrooms, in the newsrooms of the newspaper and all that. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I don't have to talk about it. I've done it. And what happens is that you don't see a plethora of African Americans having the voice that I have. This is about uplifting our community. We can't, I just gave a speech. You know, the National Alliance of the African American Scholar Athlete over there, you know, receiving a Watkins Award. African American athletes, stellar athletes, all with a 3.5 or higher GPA. I gave a speech to Representative Maxine Waters and others were there this past Saturday in Los Angeles. And I made the point that, you know what, forget about racism. It's not that it doesn't exist. It's two things. Number one, it's not as prevalent as it once was, all right, and certainly not as overt. But more importantly, it's close to irrelevant from the perspective you can't legislate what's in somebody's heart or mind. And if you focus on that, like a lot of people in my community choose to do, more don't, but there are some of us who do, it has served as an impediment to my community. We got young black kids out here. If you're thinking about somebody and your excuse is race, that is an excuse and a license to exhibit a dereliction of duty, to not go all out, to not do the best that you can, because you have got a built-in excuse. And if you have that, how does that benefit us? That's the truth here. I don't care what black leader you can point to out there. They did not go through what they went through so we could look for excuses. They were trying to fight the good fight to make a fair and equitable system. And it's gotten more and more fair with each passing year. We can't continue to lean on excuses because clearly our community is suffering more than any other community in the United States of America. And if a black person out there's got a problem with me saying that, you can go kick rocks. I do not care. I love my community, and I'm speaking for my community. I said what I said. I mean what I mean. You can tweet, Facebook. I don't give a damn what you do. It means nothing to me. I stand by what I said, and I didn't stutter.
Well said. And let me quickly address your being called a racist after discussions we have on this show. This show has become known for fearlessly addressing racially based topics.
That benefit us.
That's what we do.
We run from nothing.
And we have healthy, productive discussions that I always learn from. I've learned a lot just sitting here for the last 5 minutes.
I have as well.
And yet, as soon as we have one of these discussions, and I look down my Twitter responses, you're a racist for even bringing up the topic. You're a racist for talking about it, and I'm a racist for talking about it. It's what we do. And I hope that I know some people have benefited from what you just said. I know it in my heart, and they know it in their hearts even if they won't acknowledge it.
Very strong.
Way to go. Good job.